Before starting this video, I do want to give a shout out to my patrons that support the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you if you want to look at the Patreon link down below. So with that out of the way, let's get into this week's video. What's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on PubStomp MTG. So we're going to be going over Vorinclex. This is a 5 mana commander. It is pretty powerful for what it does. It does have trample and reach, and it has a 6/6 body, so it's a pretty big body just for a 5 mana commander. On top of that, when it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle. So you can pay 8 into that ability to exile Vorinclex, then return to the battlefield transformed into the Grand Evolution. So this does have 3 lore chapters. For the first lore chapter, mill 10 cards, put up to 2 creature cards from among milled cards onto the battlefield. For the second lore chapter, distribute 7 1/1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. And for the last lore chapter, until end of turn, creatures you control gain, you pay 1. This creature fights target creature you don't control. Then after that resolves, it flips back into Vorinclex. This version of Vorinclex is pretty interesting, especially compared to the other Praetors. This one, you don't have to have some funky ability like playing 3 spells or having a certain amount of cards in a graveyard. All you have to do is pay 8 mana. I do know 8 mana is a lot, but again, you are in green, so you're going to be ramping a lot, so that's pretty easy to go off of instead of just the other versions. I actually do have a story of this Vorinclex in pre-release. I played pre-release and it was a blast. There was a game where I was getting beat up by Crocs and Kunros. What was pretty neat about Vorinclex is I had him on the battlefield and I flipped him into the Saga. I milled cards and then put 2 creature cards onto the battlefield. One was actually Kogla and Yadaro, and so what happened is I actually fought Crocs and Kunros to win the game after that. So I thought it was just a fun little story to bring up of how powerful that backside is. We're really going to try to develop that backside as much as we can so that we can try to win the game somehow. So we definitely want to get the early game going. We definitely want a great ramp package. We do have a lot of normal spells to ramp us ahead. However, I did want to take my focus on creatures because we definitely want to have a big creature theme. So the first card I did think about was Gwenna. It has that ability to tap for 2 mana for creature spells or creature abilities. And on top of that, whenever you cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, put a 1/1 counter on Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia, and untap. This is an absolute must mana dork in the deck, no question about it. I love this card so much. Another card I did want to mention was Savala, Heart of the Wilds. For 3 mana, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power. So of course, we're going to have the biggest power on the board. I feel like personally we will because of a lot of the powerful creatures we are playing. Also on top of that, it's another mana dork. You can pay green and tap it. Add X mana in any combination of colors where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So we could definitely ramp out huge with this payoff. I know this is technically not ramp, but we must include Goreclaw. Creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less. And we could give our creatures trample and +1/+1 as long as their power is 4 or greater whenever Goreclaw does attack. So for 1, this reduces the cost of our big creatures. On top of that, it'll give them trample if they don't have trample already. This is an absolute must include like the other cards previously. Another fun include I did want to mention was Traverse the Outlands. I just think this is just a fun card, especially if we have a huge power on the board. But just in case if we just only have Vorinclex on the board, we can search for 6 basics and put them onto the battlefield. That's absolutely insane for Traverse the Outlands. Of course, you can't just have ramp. We also must have card draw. Card draw is essential in the game. Luckily, green is pretty dang good at it, especially with a lot of different options. So a great card draw option we do have is Tribute to the World Tree. For 3 mana, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 1/1 counters on it. So we have a good mix of big creatures and little creatures. Big creatures will draw some cards. Little creatures will get +1/+1 counters on them. Honestly, what an amazing enchantment just for 3 mana. If we do have a big creature on the board, we must include Rishkar's Expertise. For 6 mana, draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Say for example, Vorinclex will draw 6 cards, and it does have an incredible ability. You may cast a spell with mana value 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. In a similar fashion, we do have Return of the Wild Speaker for 5 mana, a little cheaper than Rishkar's Expertise, and at instant speed. It has two abilities: draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, or you could have it have an overrun ability. For non-human creatures you control, get +3/+3 until end of turn. So just at base, if we do have Vorinclex on the battlefield, we'll be able to draw 6 cards like Rishkar's Expertise. This is absolutely a must include, especially when we want to refill our hand. But Vorinclex is not the only Apex Predator in town. There's another Apex Predator we do want to include. I kind of made a little bit of a Garruk sub-tribal theme in here. So in a similar fashion to some of the draw spells, we do have Garruk Primal Hunter for 5 mana. It has that amazing -3 ability. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. And for its +1, you can make a 3/3 beast creature token. And on top of that, for its -6, you create a 6/6 green creature token for each land you control. To be quite honest, I've never ultimated Garruk Primal Hunter because I always want to draw cards with him with that -3. On top of that, we do have Garruk Wildspeaker. So for his +1, you could untap 2 target lands. Say for example, if you want to play a big creature, you tap 2 lands to float mana, and then you untap those to tap them again to have 4 mana floating in the air. He also does make a beast token to protect himself, and it does have an overrun ability. Creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. This version of Garruk does it all. We could ramp, we could also make creature tokens, and we have an overrun ability. I also do like the newest version of Garruk. It does have an overrun ability just for 1 creature with its +1. Then again, it makes a beast token, and it does have an emblem. At the beginning of your end step, you may search your library for a creature card, put it onto the battlefield, and shuffle your library. This is just another great Garruk card so that we could get some utility for our creatures. On top of that, if we do want to have great utility, we do have Garruk Caller of Beasts for 6 mana. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. Put all creature cards revealed this way into your hand. For his -3, you put a green creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, and for his -7, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a green creature spell, you may search your library for a creature card, then put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So we could draw into some creatures, we could put a creature directly onto play that's huge, and on top of that, we have a great ability to search our library for creature cards and putting them on the battlefield. Sign me up. So you're probably thinking to yourself, what big creatures do I want to put in this deck? Well, honestly, any big green creature you could think of. These are the ones I would consider putting in because it's a little flavorful with Phyrexia. So the first one I did think about was Tyrannex Rex. I just love big stompy dinosaurs. I mean, my channel logo is a T-Rex, but this has an amazing ability of it can't be countered. It does have Trample, Ward 4, and Haste. This also does have Toxic 4, where we could end the game for opponents pretty fast if we get enough poison counters on them. So we can make a lot of big creatures even bigger with Defiler of Vigor. So for 5 mana, you get a Trample 6/6, and on top of that, whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a 1/1 counter on each, yeah, that's right, each creature you do control. It is all about survival of the fittest. That's why we must include Kogla the Titan Ape. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and when he does attack, you can destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. Yeah, pretty much King Kong is here to destroy everything. Destroy your creatures, destroy your artifacts or enchantments, literally everything on the battlefield. I mean, it's a one-time thing with creatures and one-time thing whenever it attacks, but still, pretty powerful. You just have to make sure you hide your kids, hide your wife. Kogla's coming after them. Another card that's coming after opponents' creatures is Apex Altasaur. When it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and it does have an Enrage ability. It does fight up to 1 target creature you don't control when it's dealt damage. Yeah, no kidding. This is absolutely an angry dinosaur, no question about that. Let's also double the power and toughness of our creatures with Zapandrel Hunger Dominus. I did make a deck tech a while ago on it. It does have reach, and at the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control, and it does have that ability to pay 2 Phyrexian mana, sacrifice 2 other creatures, and put an indestructible counter on it. So seriously, this is one mean and green angry machine. I did also want to add the other 2 versions of Vorinclex with Vorinclex Voice of Hunger and Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. Honestly, both of these versions of Vorinclex are a slam dunk in this deck. Vorinclex Voice of Hunger will double our mana and make sure our opponent's mana is tapped for the next turn. And with Vorinclex Monstrous Raider, we do have that ability to speed up our saga on the backside of the original Vorinclex we do have as the commander, so that we can get a lot of payoffs off of it. Also, with the second lore chapter of our commander's ability, we could double the counters that we put on our creatures. I do know, however, the Praetors are pretty mean, so I would be cautious, especially about playing Vorinclex Voice of Hunger. A lot of people might hate you for playing it. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on this version of Vorinclex and the Grand Evolution. I actually made a deck tech of this myself because, again, that pre-release event really sparked joy in myself, where I decided, you know, I want to make Vorinclex, even though he's probably not the best Praetor around. But the biggest reason why I made a deck around him is because Again, I have a very fond memory of winning the game with him, so of course I wanted to make my own version of him. I did have a deck list down below if you want to go check it out. So let me know down below, what are your thoughts and opinions about this Vorinclex? Does it stand up to the other Vorinclexes? Again, let me know down below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and with that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.